Welcome to the People's Review Live, hosted by the Equality State Policy Center. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that advocates for fair elections and transparent government for all of Wyoming. ESPC has been hosting the People's Review Live for nearly 4 years, with the goal of bringing together subject area experts to discuss pressing issues in Wyoming. Free of cost and highly accessible, PR Live falls right in line with our mission. PR Live is possible thanks to generous donors and supporters. As a reminder, this meeting is a webinar format, so the panelists can see and hear each other. Although the panelists can't see you, we do encourage you to put your questions in the chat or question answer anytime during the conversation. If you can't see or hear the panelists right now, have any tech issues during this event, please shoot us a message and we will help as best as we can. So without further ado, I am honored to be joined by Julie Freese. Julie Freese's journey in public service began at the county clerk's office in 1980s, where she worked summers before assuming roles such as election supervisor and deputy court clerk. Her career boasts multiple re-elections as county clerk and leadership roles in election administration committees. Julie is deeply committed to ensuring fair electoral processes and representing her community at the state and national levels. Her dedication extends to overseeing administrative functions and enhancing the quality of life for residents. She resides in Pavilion area with her husband, Bert, and is proud of her 2 children, 1 grandson, and 5 granddaughters. Through her work and personal interests, Julie exemplifies a strong dedication to serving her community and enhancing the quality of life for its residents. And our second panelist is Rebekah Fitzgerald. Rebekah is a veteran political and communication strategist who has worked the last 7 election cycles and has more than a decade of experience using strategic communication to move policy initiatives, influence public perception, raise visibility of organizations, and get candidates elected. Her strengths lie in understanding the existing socio-political landscape and then developing a multifaceted plan to move projects and ideas forward. Thank you for being with us tonight. And as a reminder, viewers may submit questions using the chat and question answer feature. We'll get started with a short presentation from Rebekah.
Thanks, Jenny. And I hope I'm not a career politician, but yeah. I love it. I love it. But welcome, everybody. And again, I'm just going to share my screen really quickly and just walk through a short presentation here, and then we'll kind of get into a Q&A. Let's see if I do this correctly. All right. Oh, I don't want to start a new meeting. I just want it to go. Well, you know what? Can you see it? Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay.
We just don't see the full.
Oh, here, hold on. All right. Loading. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, great. So I'm just going to work through what we're seeing for election changes, and Julie can hop in here at any point in time. But I just wanted to draw folks' attention to policy. I am the executive director of Wyoming Free, so that's fair, reliable, ethical elections. So we want it to be easier to vote and harder to cheat. And earlier, or I guess late last fall, early winter, we issued an issue brief that followed talking through the national trends that we were seeing as it relates to elections, and then what that looks like in Wyoming. So we've got a map here, but I just wanted to talk about kind of what we've seen in 2023 as a whole. Lawmakers introduced 322 voter restrictive bills. And as it moved through the process, as legislative processes do, Wyoming became one of 11 states to pass laws that we believe curb voter access to the ballot box. And what that did was it dropped Wyoming down to the bottom towards the cost of voting index, which looks at things like impact of voters and registration deadlines and the ease to the ballot box with voter drives and pre-registration laws. And so we just see this trend as something that's happening nationally, and Wyoming's not immune to it, unfortunately. And specifically, we're going to get into a couple of things that we've saw, and that was House Bill. And I want to remind folks that this is 2023, even though it will have impact for this year's election cycle. These were House bills last year and Senate files last year. So you can see we're talking House Bill 103, Senate File 153, and then we've got some proposed rules from the Secretary of State. And we will talk through those a little bit and a little bit more here. And then, so prior to 103 passing, House Bill 103, Wyoming had a semi-open primary. And that means that voters had the opportunity to change their party affiliation at any time, all the way up to and including election day. But with the new law, voters will not be able to do that. And so what that really means is that per the law, you have 96 days before the primary election. So this year, that means by May 15th, you are going to need to declare which party you're going to be voting for. And I just want to make clear that that means that if you're not voting in a major party, and so in Wyoming, that means you're not voting in a Democrat primary or a Republican primary, that means you're not going to have the opportunity to vote in the primary election. And so if folks are interested in voting in the primary election this 2024 election cycle, they're going to need to declare a major party before May 15th. And we just want to note that in Wyoming, that means about 17,000 non-major party voters will not have the opportunity to participate unless they declare a major party. So we really believe that this disenfranchises voters and their access to the ballot box. And again, Julie, feel free to jump in at any point. And then Senate File 153. So this one, it reduces the number of early voting days from 45 to 28. We believe that this is going to be problematic for absentee ballots in particular and specifically. As we look at mail times, I think we can all agree that mail is getting a bit more unpredictable. And in Wyoming, our last major mail sorting facility is in Cheyenne, and that looks like it will be moving to Denver. I don't know if that change will end up happening before our primary election, but it does speak to the importance of having time for a ballot if you request an absentee ballot, for you to get it at your home, fill it out, and then mail it back into your clerk. And per Wyoming's statutes, all those absentee ballots have to be received by the county clerk's office no later than 7 p.m. on election day. And so it really shortens that time. When you start to look at a reduction of time from 45 days to 28, that just compresses the time that not only voters have the opportunity to request that ballot, get that ballot and turn it back in, but it also really shortens that timeline, we believe, for the county clerks to get the work done. And then I put on here, you'll notice that I made a note that there's 7 ballot boxes in the state. And the reason why we think that that's important is that means that you're needing to mail that unless folks are bringing it into the office. But those ballot boxes really allow people to drop those off. They're very secure. We've heard testimony throughout all of the interim and in previous years how serious security those ballot boxes the security is for ballot boxes. We believe that they are secure, and the counties do a good job of securing those boxes. But again, it just highlights that primarily absentees are coming through the mail unless you're walking into the office and voting early. And so the proposed Secretary of State's rules, so these were our new rules proposed by the Secretary of State's office to require proof of residency in order to vote. It changes that proof of residency. These were new rules that he developed. The comment period is now closed. We're waiting to see if he makes any changes related to that. But if they go into effect as the draft was written, it's going to require 2 forms of documentation that requires your physical address and the length of residency. Now, when we start talking about that, it sounds really simple on its face. I think everybody wants only Wyoming residents to be voting in Wyoming elections. We believe that too. We think that's very important. But we also want to make sure that people have the document, that they can easily access the documentation. And one of the biggest pieces of this is that requiring that physical address on 2 pieces. When we started talking to folks, in particular elderly folks that may not have, say, a driver's license, or they may be in an assisted care living facility, that really affects them, because a lot of times they don't have those 2 pieces. And of course, in Wyoming, we know that the largest voting bloc is folks that are over 65 in a primary election. And so that was one of the pieces that Wyoming Free spoke about and testified on, and just trying to make sure that while we want to make sure those Wyoming residents, we don't want to make it too hard. And I want to make a note here too. In Wyoming, we just don't see the voter fraud issue. We have limited fraud, and Julie might speak to this too. We just don't see massive amounts of fraud, and I think that is related to the fact that we have statutes that are that protect against that. They're enforced. We've got great county clerks that are enforcing those statutes. And I would just say we don't have a fraud problem because what we have is working. And so when we look at these new laws in an effort to make elections more secure, we just, the Heritage Foundation cites 3 voter fraud cases since 2014. I think different counties have some experience with that too, but it's just a very, very low number. And so we just see this as problematic as we try to make sure that everybody has access to the ballot box. And then, so 2024, what does it mean for folks as we look at primarily these 2 laws that have passed and then the proposed rules from the Secretary of State? And it just means that voters are going to need to shift their mindset and make decisions earlier than they have before. And so if you need to know what party you're going to affiliate with. If you're a minor party, you need to decide early if you want to vote in the primary election, you need to decide that early, and you need to pick a major party. And you need to do that before May 15th. And so then you also need to know that if these proposed rules go into effect, you need to know if you're registered to vote. And I think, Julie, you might speak to this a little bit more, but you need to, because Wyoming has an aggressive purge voter purge, that means that if you didn't vote in the last general election, and a lot of people only voted in the primary election, last election cycle, and didn't vote in the general, that means that you will have been purged. And in Wyoming, we purged 86,000 people from the voter rolls. And so I believe, I mean, what we're going to see and what we're hoping to avoid through webinars like this is educating voters that you may have been purged. So you need to know if you are registered to vote. And if you're not registered and you've been purged, that if these Secretary of State's rules go into effect, that you're going to need to produce 2 forms of identification, including your physical address. And what we're worried about is people not getting or going to the polls and not knowing this and not having those forms of identification, and having to then cast a provisional ballot. And so, sorry for the formatting on the slide, but what we're really hoping people will do is that you make a plan to vote. You make a decision early that if you plan to participate in the primary election, and that you get registered to vote, choose your party affiliation early before May 15th, which frankly is rapidly approaching. And then do your research. There are great resources out there, the League of Women Voters, Why Vote, your local newspapers. There's probably going to be additional webinars, candidate forums, etc. And then we're really encouraging everybody to tell your friends about these changes and that they need to get registered to vote and to take action early. So I quickly kind of ran through that, knowing that people may have questions, and wanted to be able to get to those.
Thanks, Rebekah. Julie, did you want to touch on that last part about the purging right away?
Sure, it is really important, especially if you've always voted and truly things changed this last in 2022. There was most of the decisions of who was going to be in what office at the primary. And so very little people voted in the general, which is kind of unusual. So if you are one of those people, and you should have gotten a notice in the mail that says you didn't vote and how to get back on, the problem is nobody updates their registration with us. And that's also going to be a problem this election, is if you don't pay attention to when you move, that you also update your voter registration, then you don't get the mail from us. And then so you might have totally been purged from the record and you think you're still on there. So a big message to you is all county clerks are waiting for you to call into their offices and have us look it up and see if you're registered and if everything is ready for you to go to the election or not. And I would say that you should get on that right away if you're one of those people. Definitely.
So does this mean that Wyoming does not allow or a same-day voter registration? Or
it does allow same-day voter registration. You just, if you're on the party part of it. So if you're a brand new voter or you're moving from another county, you may select a party. So if you are one of those purge people and you have to register again, whatever you were last time, if you wanted to change it this time because you're not registered, then you can, and you have to choose a party, obviously. But if you're already on the system, then you can't change your party at the polls. You can change your address, you can change your name. That's all you can change on there, but you cannot change your party at that point.
so could you explain how, what kind of documentation is needed? Rebekah referenced that you need 2. And then also whether people can register online or have to go in person.
So this is where it gets a little bit hard now. So if the proposed rules pass, or if they change any format, the secretary did mention during the hearing that maybe he would go to just the Wyoming driver's license as if the address on there was a physical address or a PO box, because that was one of the clerk's concerns. There's a lot of counties that most of the people there just have a PO box on there. So if he goes to that, it seemed like he was kind of moving that direction. It might be a little bit easier for those folks who have a Wyoming driver's license. However, I literally was starting a flow chart to be prepared for what ifs, because the Help America Vote Act requires certain things to get registered. So I'm going to start with that. So if you own a valid Wyoming driver's license, you must show or give us that number. So if you have that one memorized, that's fine. You can show us any other ID after that. But it's best if you don't know your number and you do have a Wyoming driver's license or ID, the Wyoming ID also does go through the system that same way. So you need to bring those, and then we can get you registered to vote. Then if the residential rules go into place, again, if you have that Wyoming driver's license, hopefully that will be it and that will be fine. But if not, if it's continuing, then if your address isn't the same as the address you gave us, then you would have to give another form of, there's a whole list of things: utility bills, hunting licenses, concealed weapon permits, passports. There's a number of things that you would give to us to prove your residency. The second part of that, so going back to just the regular registration, if you don't own a valid Wyoming driver's license, then you must give us the last 4 of your social security number and show us one of the other IDs that's also listed in a different place in the statute, or actually probably in rules, that tells you what you can use. And that would be your tribal IDs, your US passports, again, another state's driver's license, a government ID, school ID, military ID. I had written those all down. So you can show us those as just proof that you are who you say you are. Then again, if the residency goes through, then you're going to have to go through that process as well. And the online question, was that the online question? There isn't really an online in Wyoming. You can go onto the Secretary of State's website or to the counties. We usually link to the Secretary of State's site. You can fill out the form, print it out, fill it out, go to a notary and have it notarized. You send it into your county clerk with a copy of your ID showing your Wyoming driver's license or your ID, either one, showing that everything is correct there. Again, with residency, those instructions are going to have to change significantly. So right now, nobody would know what those are. Today, you would have to have those, but whenever those may or may not go into place, or may go into place, then you'll have to have it as of the date that they're effective.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
A lot of nuances here.
Yeah, it is. That's why I said I'm serious that we use a flow chart. It's the only way to teach your election judges who do this maybe, once every 2 years. So we do have flow charts, and we're going to add on to it if the residency goes through. So.
Wow. Well, thank you for all of your work and all of those election judges for taking the time to learn the flow chart and follow it.
That's right. We appreciate them very much as well.
Well, so we'll give you a break, and Rebekah, let's see, how does closing the primary system further hurt voters? And why does the primary on August 20th matter in Wyoming?
Sure, great question. So, that change of closing that primary, it just traditionally in Wyoming, we kind of have this tradition of we get tired of politicians campaigning. And so a lot of times folks, people don't even know who's on the ballot until they declare, right? So and that's like in May normally. We want to do it as short as possible. And so this year with this change, you will need to declare a major party, either Republican or Democrat, to vote in the primary election. And you're going to need to make that decision before the final list has been populated. So you have to declare before those nominations, or before that candidacy is closed. And so it's the day before. You have to declare that party the day before. So effectively, you need to probably put your ear to the ground in your community and know who might be running. If you're going to want to vote for them on a Republican ticket or a Democrat ticket, you're going to need to pick that before you know, maybe even if they're running yet. And so we know a lot of candidates literally wait till the last day to file. And so that, and if you're not paying attention, if you're already registered to vote and you want to make that change, you won't be able to make that change. And so, and then, voting in the primary election, I think Julie mentioned it before, most of Wyoming's elections are decided in the primary. And so, in those partisan elections, I should clarify, those nonpartisan are moved to the general, but yeah, all those decisions are made in August most of the time. So that's where, if you want to have a say about it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I was gonna throw in a little bit of history because I know a lot of people ask us here at the counter because they don't want to follow the politics and whatnot. So, typically why we have our primary and the way we do it in Wyoming is it's each of the parties' time to select their best candidates to go to the general. And there was a time when Fremont County was almost half and half, and there were other places in the state that maybe weren't as close as that, but it was important, and people did pick a party, and they choose their candidates from those lists. But you have a lot of local candidates, so that's your county commissioners, your clerk, your treasurer, your sheriff, that whole list. And you care about that as voters. And so you're saying, why can't I vote for them? Because if I don't get to vote in a certain part of the primary, I'm not going to really get to vote for my local candidates. And to me, party doesn't matter in that case. And I understand that. I do understand that. And I think that that's why you're finding more and more push to people going to the other party, is they don't have that much on their ballot, which is unfortunate. So I think that helps maybe for people to understand that it really is the party's time to pick their best candidates, but it sure makes it hard when we don't have a real strong two-party system.
Thanks for that, Julia. I think that was really important to add. Thank you.
And this is, let's see, I think we have a question in, but before I ask that question that just came in, I have a follow-up. Has there been, I don't mean to blindside you, but I'm curious if there have been efforts for those local races, like city council, school board, county commissioners. A lot of them, can you tell us which ones are partisan and which ones aren't?
Absolutely. So all of your national down through your county offices, and then precinct committee people are people that work for the party in each precinct. Those are all partisan. Then your city council, school board, special districts, those are all nonpartisan, and anybody can vote on those. But I think the problem also that comes up, and Rebekah mentioned that too, is we have a lot of unaffiliated, or they call themselves independent, but it's an unaffiliated voter, meaning I don't affiliate with any of them because I don't want to get involved in all that and get all the mail. This is what we hear, so they choose to do that. But now, because you can't change your party at the polls, if you come to the polls and you don't live in a city or a town, you won't have anything to vote on as an unaffiliated. In the city and towns, you could vote for the city council and the mayor and whatever's up there, but you will not, if you live in my neck of the woods, which is rural, there's nothing for an unaffiliated voter. So if they didn't change their party ahead of time, which a lot of them do, they just say, I wait until it's closer and I decide which party I want to be, and then I switch back. And so, I mean, that's big decisions for especially those folks, because they don't want to be affiliated, but they do want to participate later.
So the question that came in is, what is the easiest way to see who will be on your ballot?
So we do something here in Fremont County, and I know this might be going across a lot of places, but here in Fremont County, and I think some other ones are picking this up, we have an awesome GIS system, which is our mapping system that the assessor's office produces. We have worked with Rich Greenwood out of Jackson to put our ballots per party, or not, excuse me, well, per party too. There'll be all the parties at the primary per precinct. So if you go to your address and you click on voting districts, it would tell you all the districts that you're in. And then you also can go see the options for your ballots on there. So that's how we do it. Every county clerk's office is required to post all of our ballot styles. And so it looks like the Pepto-Bismol hall downstairs if you're in elections at our office, because we put them all along the wall there. And we have so many ballot styles here. That's how we post ours. And I'm sure everybody has to post them. So I'm sure it's very similar across the state. And you can also just call us and ask us for a copy of what your ballot would look like. We usually have a book right there in the office and we'll pull it out and give them a copy.
And when is that copy ready?
So it'll be after the people file for office, and then it gives us a little bit of time to code. There's so many days before the election. I apologize. I think it's about the time your absentees for the military would go out, which at least 45 days prior to the election. I'm sure it's before that because we have to make sure we double check that everything's there and correct and post them. So.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. This might be for both of you, but we'll let Rebekah go first. How do those oh wait, sorry, wrong question. Why is it important for voters to know their registration status, especially before candidate filing?
Well, I think it goes back to what we were talking a little bit earlier with you want to know if you're registered to vote, and then if you're gonna want to make a change, you're gonna want to do that because you're going to need to make any party decision prior to knowing who's going to be on the ballot. If you're not registered, then I mean, those proposed rules you might want to pay attention to those, especially if you just moved. You want to make sure that you've got the proper documentation. And then when you do make that, if you've been purged or you need to make a change in your registration, then you can declare that party affiliation at that point. But you're gonna want to know so you don't roll into on voting day and not have the documents that you need, especially if that change takes place.
Great, thank you. And so could you kind of, or both, one or both of you, the most common methods for voting in Wyoming elections and kind of walk us through the process?
I still think the most common method is people wanting to go to the polls. I think we're still seeing our numbers, besides 2020 when COVID was here, our numbers have come back down from absentee voting to back at the polls. So a lot of people like to go to the polls. It's a great grassroots thing for them. I would say the next most common one would be absentee balloting. A lot of people maybe feel better sitting at home at the table and thinking about it, reading the paper, talking to their, student or not student, but their child about how to vote. And maybe that's their first time around. So a lot of people are comfortable with that. I had, my family worked in the mining and oil and gas industry. I never knew when they were going to be home. They didn't know when they were going to be home. A lot of those folks do that. Women that are going to have babies pretty soon, they have opted to use that. Maybe you have a disability, and even though we have machines for that, it's more comfortable at home to do that. And sometimes I just don't want the hassle of standing in line, and that's my choice, and it's allowed by law. So absentee is, I think, the next highest. And then not everybody does early absentee voting, which allows you to come in and actually check in and vote on a ballot and put it through the machine just like you do on election day. It is something that each one of us as clerks can decide if it's good for our county or not, and if you have the staff to do that. So I think there are, a number of people that do that, but not everybody.
So maybe you could talk to us a little bit about the absentee ballots. Like if someone wanted to do that, how do they go about that?
There's a number of ways you can do that. So you can email us and say you need an absentee ballot, and we're going to obviously need your full legal name, your date of birth, your physical address, and where you want it mailed to. And then you can also call us with that same information. You can write us a letter with the same information. There's some forms that you can fill out and send to us as well, as long as all that information is there. We are actively trying to talk to the voter who wants it, even though somebody else might be asking for them. They can do that, but you have to know all their personal information. And so we may ask more questions that's on our voter list just to make sure we have the right person that we're sending this out to. You can also come into the office and you can get your ballot. The only change there is you must show ID now to get it in person. And then you can leave with it, mail it back to us, bring it back to us. Those who have drop boxes, you can use a drop box. If you are, let's say I'm going to town, I'm going to get my absentee ballot. My husband says, hey, get me mine while you're there. There is a permission form that you need to sign that says, here's all my information. I'm signing off on it. And I'm giving permission to Julie Freese to get my ballot for me. So when they come in, we are going to also ID the person who comes in because it's not a notarized affidavit. So we're going to ID the person coming in, and then just to make sure we're giving it to the right person, and we can do that. Now, if they came in and forgot that they didn't have the permission slip, but they wanted to get that for the husband, I can still give you all the information. You feel good about, that's who I'm sending that to. We will only mail it to them at their address. We are not allowed to give it away if they don't have permission. And so those are the common methods of getting your absentees.
That's helpful. And so just to clarify, so that the difference between an absentee balloting and then the early absentee is, when does that frame happen for the early absentee?
So it has to be the same time frame as absentee. So it used to be the 45 days. We couldn't cut it down. And it's the same thing now with 28 days. So if we are going to have an early voting, which is another reason some clerks don't do it, then you have to have it the 28 days as well at the same time. Yeah.
So the difference between absentee and early absentee is early absentee, you can walk in
and run your ballot through the machine. It's just like being at the polls.
Oh, but you have to get your ballot sent to you first, you just pick it up right there?
No, you can come in today and say, I would like to early absentee vote. And they say, fine. And you go check in like you would at the polls. They check you in, they give you a ballot, you go to a booth, you fill it out, and you walk over to the machine, you run it through, you get your I voted sticker, and you walk out. So that's the difference. If you want to take it home to review it, then you get it, that's the traditional absentee ballot in an envelope. You take it home, return it. And as Rebekah mentioned, that has to be back into our office by 7 p.m. on election day. And I know we've talked about this across the state, and this is going to change for some people in some counties, but it's super important that it always come back to the county clerk or whatever area they told you to come back to. Don't drop it off at the polls, because this year we're not going to allow that. We talked about it as clerks, and we want to be uniform on that. It needs to come to the vote center where it's being counted. That's what their job is to count those. So we want to make sure those come back where they're supposed to.
So could you repeat that one more time? Because it seems kind of important to clarify.
So sometimes people think that, my husband again. So, geez, I forgot to finish my here's the absentee ballot. Today's, just take it to the polls when you go. And so I can't do that because they're not going to open it up and run it through the machine. And it says in the instructions, this must be returned to the county clerk's office by 7 p.m. So then my job is either to run it to Lander or he doesn't get to vote. That's the two choices that I have on that. We don't want those dropped off at the polls. And there has been some counties that allowed that, but as clerks, we have decided we are going to make that very clear. It has to get back to the vote center so we can count them there.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that clarity.
You bet.
So, Rebekah, maybe you might have some insight on this. So how do these different methods affect voters and voter turnout?
Sure, sure. I think Julie's hit on it a little bit, and folks that might need that absentee, we want it there and available for folks to use. And so a lot of folks that may not be able to get to the polls, having the ability to absentee vote, that's a lot of people use that. A lot of people know they're going to be out of town on vacation, or they're going to have a baby, or they just, certainly a lot of elderly folks utilize that option as well. But as Julie mentioned, making sure that we have enough, I think, staff and election judges, primarily, people want to vote in person. For a lot of people, that is their preferred method. And I guess that I just would say that, in Wyoming, we just want to make sure that we can have enough of those voting centers open and available. And so what we're always trying to do, and what the county clerks are always trying to do, is recruit good election judges, and making sure that we can have enough of those places where people can easily get somewhere relatively close. Wyoming, sometimes it's still far away, but we want to make sure we have enough polling centers for people to be able to come and vote in person like they want to do.
Just thank you, Rebekah. And just thinking on that accessibility, what about a language assistance? Like we have 1 in 10 voters are Hispanic. What's available for assistance, whether it's language or others?
So we're not required by law, based on our population of minorities, to have ballots in a different language, or like our express vote doesn't have anything audible in a different language. But anybody who comes into the polling place that needs assistance may bring their own assistants to help them with their ballot.
So a translator, or if someone can't read, because are the ballots in Braille?
We don't have ballots in Braille, but we do have the express vote, which is an ADA compliant machine that we're required by the federal government to have. It has a Braille pad on it. If you cannot see, you put on the earphones and it walks you through that. The folks who have sip and puffs, they can attach that to that. Maybe you have some problems with your eyes, you can change the screen and the font and the lightness and darkness and turn it off completely if you're blind and don't want somebody to watch you vote. Or you can bring somebody to help you with a regular ballot, or with that, they have the right to ask for any assistance of their choice. They can bring an assistant of their choice. And I think that's the biggest thing, is a lot of people say, well, you can't bring in, I think the only thing is your employer can't come help you. But anybody else can come in there. And we do have people sometimes going, well, so-and-so was helping them with their ballot. That is truly fine, as long as the voter has requested that.
That's cool. So every polling place has an compliant, ADA compliant.
We're required to. So yes, we do.
That's great.
But anybody can use it. I mean, we have vote centers, so I must use it. I don't have ballots at every one of my vote centers. So places where they don't have that particular ballot that isn't their area, then they vote on the express vote anyway. And they love it. So most of them anyway.
Great. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of
Jenny, I'm just gonna, we had one question come through asking if the translators needed to be registered voters.
No.
Thanks for catching that, Rebekah.
Yeah, no problem.
So I'm going to shift a little bit into, in the event of a contested election or discrepancies in the voting process, what recourse do voters have to address their concerns or disputes?
So the first thing I tell people all the time, and it's getting less and less that this happens, but anytime that you feel like there's a discrepancy or a problem, you should call your county clerk. Calling somebody else is not helping. Because I always say, if you think something's going on in the middle of the day, this is a little bit off your subject a little bit, but if you think something's wrong in the middle of the day, you need to call me because I will check it out immediately. And I know the other county clerks will as well. I can fix something on election day and make sure that it doesn't happen. After the fact, if you think, you know, it was a really close vote and I just don't think I really lost or whatever, you can request a recount. If it is not an automatic recount by statute, you can pay for that recount to happen, which is basically running the ballots back through a machine, just to make sure the count is correct. You can fill out a complaint form as long as you have some factual information on whatever it is. This person doesn't really live in Wyoming or in my precinct or whatever, but you have to have factual information and you have to be willing to sign your name to it because it has to be investigated by law enforcement. But I think the big thing is you got to talk to your county clerks and you got to tell them what your concerns are and see what they're doing about it. You can't just guess what we're doing or not doing.
That's helpful. So it seems like knowing at your own county clerk is super important, and knowing where the offices are and all of that. Can you provide just like how does someone know where that is, and how do they learn about that?
So if you go to the Secretary of State's website, you can actually click on, they have a link to all of us. So it talks about the voter registration and who is your county clerk and how do you get a hold of them. And that's the best way to get that. You can also go to our websites. If you're in, you know, each county, excuse me, has their own website. And so we all have information about elections and about ourselves and how to get a hold of us. So I think both of them are really good options.
Thank you. And we'll go ahead and we'll post that on our website too,
Okay.
so that people can
That's
find
great.
that link to the Secretary of State's just to help if we can
Absolutely.
make that connection. So I'm just gonna check to see if there's some more. No, I don't see any other questions from our audience out there.
I did see you had one question I would like to go over if I can.
Yes, that was going to be my next. Yeah, go for it, please.
So one of the questions that you had put in front of us, are there any measures in place to ensure the security and integrity of voting processes in Wyoming, particularly regarding electronic voting systems and voter data protection? So we have recently, I mean, many of us have done a number of trainings with our company ESNS, which is Election Systems and Software, and they're out of Nebraska. And their work in the election industry is worldwide, and they're one of, if not the largest company. They have to be accredited, and their machines have to be certified by the EAC, which is the Elections Assistance Commission, which is federal. And so you can't even buy them if they don't pass this. And so when they put in millions and billions of dollars on these things, they are not willing to lose their credibility by having a bad machine. So I will tell you this, recently, all 23 counties went through a training at the legislature for a full day on our machines. We do not have modems. That's wildly told that we don't know what we're talking about. We can see there are no modems. There is not the iDRAC chip in there. We have used wireless detectors to figure out there is no wireless communication. There's a USB stick that is encrypted and costs a lot of money to buy from ESNS. You can't buy it off the counter. And that is the brains to where your programming goes in there. If you take that out, that machine and that box is nothing. It's might as well put trash in it because that's about all it's good for. We do rigorous logic and accuracy testing on our machines right before every election. And we also do a public test that we also do with the public, the same sort of thing. And we are looking at some more uniformity across the county clerks of adding a few more things that some of our constituents have asked us. I wish we would do this, and some of those are maybe, I'm not going to say we're absolutely doing this because we got to figure out the logistics, but maybe having some of our people there mark their own ballot. I mean, we have a set test deck and that whole thing. So yes, I understand why maybe you wouldn't trust that. So mark your own ballot and run it through with our stuff and add in the results. Maybe take a small sampling and let a group of them do a hand count to make sure that they feel like the hand count matches, what the machines say. And then we always do a post-audit election required by statute after the election of running that same test. And then we also have a way to do a post-audit where we're randomly picking ballots. And then we're looking on one screen and we see how the voter voted. And then you go to the other screen and you see how the machine counted it. And in 2022, when we did this across the primary and the general, across all the counties, it was 100% accurate. And so that's the best I can tell you, is that we're very conscientious of the fact that people don't trust the machines. In Wyoming, we feel like we're doing a good job here. And if you have any suggestions besides counting the whole thing by hand, it is very difficult to, you really need to think about that, because there's like 30 things on a ballot, and we have like 180 ballot styles every election here in Fremont County. That's a lot of ballots to try to keep. Plus we have rotation of candidates, and it's not as easy as you think. And we don't have those kind of statutes that really cover all the things that you need to on that. So we do care, and we are working at ways that'll help our constituents feel better about that and get involved and sign up for one of those tests when we notify the parties, be willing to go. I'll go down there and I'll watch that and I'll be involved in that. Because a lot of times people will leave there and go, wow, I had no idea what it takes to get this machine ready to go.
Wow. I really have a hard time believing that a human could beat 100% accurate
I
versus
agree.
the machine. My eyes get tired after reading a few things of the same.
Right.
So that's really impressive.
Right.
And so it sounds like there's opportunities for the public to volunteer in testing and being a part of that accuracy.
Right.
So that's great. A couple things popped up. I know we're getting close, but what is your favorite part about interacting with voters?
Well, I don't get to go out to the polls very much. I do see them in here, and sometimes if we have some problems at the polls, I don't know that it's always a great interaction, but I love to see that how important voting is for them. That was something that I grew up with my parents, how very strong that was and how important that was, that you make sure you do that and you participate. And so I love that people get out and want to have their voice, marked down on a piece of paper and counted for. And the ones who say, well, I voted so I can complain, I laugh with them and say, yeah, you can, you did that. So it's fun to see people talking to other people and getting out and just having a good time. That'll, like I said, grassroots is great as well. So
kind of on that, Rebekah, like why are you investing so much time in election work?
Sure. Yeah, it's similar to Julie in the fact that I believe strongly that in representative democracy, and the best way to engage and have your voice heard is to vote for people. And I believe strongly too in the work that our clerks do. And I believe that the United States has the best election system in the world. And I think that it's a testament to the work that everybody has done to get it to the spot, and continual care that people have in the process. And so just ensuring that people still have access to be able to have that voice heard in a way that is secure is what gets me fired up about elections, and making sure that people just participate in the process.
Well, on that note, I just as you guys were thinking about, we're gonna wrap it up here quickly, but like there's a lot of information. So if you could each pick like one, you can maybe squeeze in a second, but like tidbit that you feel is super important for people to know in this preparing for this 2024 elections.
So your vote does count. Your vote does count. And so don't not vote because you've listened to somebody who says your vote doesn't count. Your vote does count. And I see every day when we do recounts or the margin is like this or it's tied, your vote, one vote does count.
Yeah, absolutely. My husband lost his election by 1 vote. And so, but we did find another one. And but you know, that it matters. And I'll just say that I tell that story, and I just want people to know, after watching the process and watching the recount, in that that it's incredibly impressive, the amount of care and work that goes in to making sure that your vote is counted. And so what I would just say, I would echo, like, please do vote. And then also, with the changes in 2024, I mean, make your plan to vote early. Like, if you want to participate, know how you want to participate. And be thoughtful about that, because there are changes that will affect how you can participate. And if you decide later, then you may not get to participate how you want to.
I said that was going to be the last, but I do just like, so I know that you said major parties, but I forgot to ask, like, what does major party mean versus being unaffiliated?
Yeah. So I mean, major party in Wyoming is Republican and Democrat. Those are the two major parties, and I don't remember, Julie, what the threshold is for chipping it into a major party. But I don't think anything else is close. I don't think we're close on any other, like, constitutionalist or libertarian. They don't have enough numbers to qualify as a major party in Wyoming.
It's a certain percentage of how many vote for representative in Congress at the last election. And it's not a huge amount, but it's still pretty, I mean, their candidate has to make that many votes so that they can become a minor party, which I don't think any of them even are a minor party right now. So they're still out there, and you can choose them, and they have conventions of their own and send people on to the general election ballot, but it's not a where you get to vote for them type of thing in the primary.
Thank you for that, because that's an important thing. So there's two options in Wyoming from what I hear. If you want to vote in the primary beyond just city council and school board, and maybe some of the special districts. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And the special districts end up in the general. So like school boards and all those end up in the general. So everybody can vote on them. That makes it a little bit easier. So your only nonpartisan ones are the cities and towns, councils, mayors, whatever's up. And if there's a ballot proposition, which not too many of those, I might have one this election for senior citizen formation district. That would be the only one. And there'd be a couple precincts that might qualify for our unaffiliated there.
Okay. So in the primary, you choose for legislature, which is senators, representatives, county commissioners, and any other county.
So if you have a county office, like we have one county officer who is a clerk of district court where she was appointed, so she's going to have to stand for election. So you might have a few of those, but your county elections, your governor and all those things are on 2 years from now. And your national stuff. So you're going to have U.S. House for sure. I don't know if the Senate is up. Usually some judges that you have to look at retention. That's in the general, I guess, as well. So I mean, yeah, there's quite a few things up this year. So don't miss it. Don't miss the election. There's quite a few things up for grabs.
Well, I think that's a good ending. Don't miss the election. Don't miss your opportunity to vote.
Right.
So, well, thank you both for your time and your wisdom and passion for fair elections and getting people out to vote. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. And thank you, audience, for joining the People's Review Live. The Equality State Policy Center is a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit organization. We rely on charitable gifts to fund our work. Donations can be made through our website. Thanks for being here. And our next event will be our Tax Facts Lunch and learn. And that is March 27th at noon. And you can register at our website. Thank you and have a wonderful night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.